As the city of Christchurch recovers and rebuilds after the earthquakes of 2010 and 2011, what is the future of the eastern flatland suburbs? Welcome to Eyes East, our series about the recovery of East Christchurch. The earthquakes of 2010 and 2011 had enormous impacts on the eastern suburbs of Christchurch, particularly those along the Avon River. There was severe land damage with liquefaction subsidence and lateral spread, which in turn resulted in great damage to housing, to underground and roading infrastructure, to businesses and to the environment and the amenities. As a result, in June 2011, the government red zoned 450 hectares of land along the lower Avon and offered almost 6,000 households who lived there buyout options, because it was decided that at that point in time, the land could not be economically remediated and rebuilt on. In the 4 years since the red zoning decisions, most residents have now left their homes, the houses have been demolished and the ground cleared, leaving a large swathe of empty land running through the east, the size of around 2.5 Hagley Parks. Here is the story of two families who went through this process. One family from Avondale, Brian and Yasway Parker, and the other from Avonside, Leanne Curtis and Andrew Button. Brian and Leanne are leading members of the Canterbury Community's Earthquake Recovery Network, or CanCERN.
We're at the old property where myself and my family used to live, right on the Avon River.
Where we used to live in Avonside, our old home was right behind us. Still feels like home. Our land sunk 1.4 metres. We're really prone to liquefaction in this area too. We had 600 mils of liquefaction over our section 3 times.
All the power was off, wasn't any water, and because we're right beside the river here, we had a lot of lateral spreads, and as a result of liquefaction we had a lot of silt and sand bubble up out of the ground. Yeah, I thought the river had burst actually when we were here at that time, and just chaos.
I was quite tough situation because after 3 weeks later, Japan had an earthquake. I'm Japanese, so kind of think about then, and also I'm affected by earthquakes.
For the most part, I'd have to say in Avonside, people all, poured out of the driveways and helped each other.
We had been a community which lived in the same street but didn't really communicate or socialise together or anything like that, or look after each other as we did afterwards.
The earthquakes itself really brought the community together, to tell you the truth, the earthquakes. So people were helping each other, people were learning who their neighbours were and extended neighbours were, and friends and family of those neighbours who they've really never sort of known before apart from hellos in the street.
Village values was the thing that came up. We wanted to move and create villages because we wanted that sense of connection that we had after the quake. But in terms of how people responded to you've been red zoned, there's an offer, you're basically going to leave. That was a really individual thing, not even family by family, individual by individual. So I don't think we did it as a community. We did it as individual people, even within families.
It was a bizarre feeling. It was quite lost, like really wanting to know what next, but also trying to keep family safe as well, because it's been such a dangerous, hideous time.
We had really different needs.
Yeah, everybody.
I needed to stay.
Yep.
Andrew needed to go.
Yep.
So we really divided communities, and so it was a pretty divisive decision.
And we talk about transition. We moved 30k away. We're probably going to move back. We have not been able to move our life, so I don't think we transitioned.
It's bloody traumatic actually to think about all of that stuff and all the things that you had and the community and the neighbours and all of that sort of thing.
I didn't have a time to feel sad. Things we had to do many things. We have to find a house, and we have to find a good place, good school for my daughter, and moving, packing. It's all we had to do. Things, hiding emotion, this kind of thing.
My way of coping with this decision is to ignore it, really, to try and stick it in the back of my head and not actually really process it.
I think lots of red zoners have got their red zone experience in Pandora's box somewhere because you don't know how to unpack it, you don't know when to unpack it, you don't actually know what to think about it.
It's weird picturing all the houses that used to be here, but real weird not seeing our house here anymore.
When you finally sort of sign the papers and you finally get everything done where you know that you have to leave and you finally do actually leave, for me, I wanted that house to disappear straight away. It doesn't look like it used to, so it makes it easier to tell you the truth.
Much nicer that it's clear. I think you can start to see it as a future space as opposed to a space that was been a bit of a wrecking ball.
A bloody mess the way that they have removed the houses, because we could have done so much more with the houses.
I personally don't have a picture of what it needs to look like, as long as it's a place which helps people's recovery. So it needs to have something that recognises the people that live here.
Do you think the land should be remediated and more houses built here?
No, not me. This is an asset to the Crown. It's actually a whole part of our social recovery for the people that live there. So my gut feeling is no.
I would love to live back here again if they remediated the land and they put. I would love to have first right of refusal on this bit of dirt, which I had to sell to the government.
No, I guess is it's a pretty strong response. But then there is the responsibility. There's a lot of money that's been spent here, but also other issues. I mean, we've still got flooding problems, which means protecting the families which are still here in this area. We've got half of Avonside has disappeared, and we've got half that are still here.
Sports grounds?
Rugby grounds.
I want to make this paradise again here, like for example, veggie garden and a big community house with kitchen. It's showing hospitality, generosity, and supporting community by sharing food. Why not?
What I'd like to see here is the result of really good community discussion, as opposed to people making decisions in silent rooms in the backwaters of nowhere, which may be good intentions, but in the end it's just too hard for the communities to understand.
This is still home. There's no house on it. It was a terribly traumatic place to be in the earthquake, but for whatever reason, don't understand it, it is still home. We sold the land, you didn't sell it home.
Families obviously still have a tremendous attachment to the lands that they had to leave behind. It is not just another part of the Crown Estate, but a part of our community's history and backyard. This is no more so than if your family has been left behind, literally living on the edge of the red zone. Coming up, what has life been like for one such family? And then a look at the government's intentions on the future use of the red zone lands. Welcome back. The earthquakes of 2010 and 2011 had enormous impacts on the eastern suburbs of Christchurch. Because of the severe land damage, the government red zoned almost 6,000 properties along the lower Avon. Most of the residents have now left their homes. The houses have been demolished and the land cleared. The red zoning process saw whole suburbs gradually dissolve away and others split into two, half red zone and half green zone. It hasn't been easy for families in either situation, especially where the zone boundary went straight down the middle of a residential street. Such was the situation in Woodchester Ave in Richmond.
Our side of the street is the green side, over the road is the red side. Personally speaking, my family, we came off pretty lightly. Neighbour one side is a rebuild, neighbour the other side they've had the work completed recently. Some of the neighbours moved away pretty quickly, some obviously fighting their insurers. One of our neighbours over the street had lived in the house for 30, 40 years, that was where he was going to stay until, they passed on. So to be forced, to have your hand forced and to move away must have been awful, It was a much better street before the earthquake, there's no doubt about it, because there's more people, there's more life. After the earthquakes, half the street's gone. The community spirit is still there, but there's all these sort of new issues that have arisen since the quakes, but have brought the neighbours together to try and resolve those issues. So it's a different sort of feeling. It's not as happy-go-lucky as it was. Perhaps we'd have barbecues and a bit more fun. And now it's all a bit serious and has adverse financial implications on our properties. I joked with the neighbours over the road about it would be quite nice if you all left so I could have a river view. In hindsight, I think I prefer the neighbours. It's just very different. It's not what we bought. We wanted to have our family brought up in a community with other families, and now it doesn't happen. So,
What would you like to see happen in the residential red zone?
in an ideal world, it would be a park, or even floodplain. It could be used in such a positive environmental way, but generally governments are so short-sighted, and they're after it's all about the bottom line. It would have massive positive benefits for our family, absolutely. It's a bit difficult to see that happening when we're still surrounded by broken streets and live cables dangling from power lines and graffiti and broken glass everywhere. So it's quite difficult to see that, but if it does happen, then it would be amazing.
So whether people ended up red or green zoned in the east, life has been difficult. Yet there is still a lot of keen interest in the future of the red zone lands. And the Crown, as the owner, the government, has yet to make any decision regarding its future use. But they have started to signal their intentions on the priorities and the processes that they may follow in making those decisions. In April last year, the Prime Minister was in Christchurch to announce those intentions at a breakfast hosted by the Canterbury Employers' Chamber of Commerce. And here is what he had to say.
While the land is severely damaged, that doesn't mean we can't devise new ways to use it. We want to hear from the people of Christchurch and Kaiapoi what they want to see happen to this land, whether this is parks, playing fields, cycleways, or other innovative ideas.
So there is a clear intention here to consult with the communities of Greater Christchurch on the red zone future use. This is borne out by the released Cabinet papers, which identify 4 key priorities for the recovery of the red zones. That infrastructure needs to be provided for, that public participation in determining the future use is encouraged and enabled, that amenity values are achieved, and that options that offer a financial return for the government are left open. We'll refer to these priorities from time to time throughout the series. The Prime Minister's announcement was well over a year ago now, so what has happened since? Well, not a great deal when it comes to the Christchurch red zone lands. But there was a red zone future use consultation exercise carried out in 2014 in the Waimakariri district, and that gives us some pointers on what we can expect in Christchurch. I went out to Kaiapoi to ask Simon Markham from the Waimakariri District Council to tell us about the Waimakariri consultation.
There were 1,100 properties in the red zone spread across Kaiapoi, the Pines Beach and the Kairaki communities. So some quite different red zone areas, and that's one thing to be really aware of, including in Christchurch.
Tell us about the consultation Sarah undertook for the Waimakariri red zone last year.
That was June, July, August last year. And that was a preliminary consultation phase at a very ideas level. I guess there were two sides to that in terms of the actual consultation. One was about activating the issue again through the media, online, and letterbox drops to all of the Waimakariri community households. And the second part of that was then opportunities for people to share views about future use through online and then through meetings and in writing. Two quite simple questions. What's important to you? What are the values that are important? And the second, what are some of the ideas about how that land should be used in the future? So in terms of values, ideas around community and family and nature and reflection were really important. About just under half of the ideas focused on various aspects of recreation. So that was parks and walking and biking and dog parks and playgrounds, so really opportunities for people. 20% focused on environment, and that was really trees, native vegetation, regeneration, and those sorts of ideas. Interestingly, a similar proportion, about 1 in 5 ideas around business from the point of view of markets and the opportunity for red zone future use to assist in recovery of the town centre. I think there's merit in starting wide, not being predetermining, but being now informed about land capability. There was a strong similarity of views about nature and natural use and recreation, but the area where views differed most, and probably the only area that was really there were really divergent views, while some people said never rebuild residential use on this land, and others said yes, let's consider that. And these weren't large numbers of the respondents that were participating, giving feedback. We need to appreciate that the wider community comes at this at different levels. There are the immediate adjoining neighbours who are permanent residents nearby, so they will have particularly important issues from their point of view. There'll be the whole Christchurch wider community who may not now, after the time has passed, be quite as aware of the extent and nature of the red zone. So we've got to be finding a good balance between the long-term potential, but equally finding some projects that can be decided and got on with quickly, because part of recovery is progress on red zone use, both short, medium and long term.
Well, that progress is still nowhere in sight for Christchurch, and there has been no further follow-up consultation yet in the Waimakariri. The main reason for the delays, according to the government, is the Supreme Court decision regarding the Quake Outcast case that has had wide-ranging implications. These have highlighted a legal requirement for the development of recovery plans on any matters relating to the residential red zone, including residual settlement offers and future use. Such plans are required to be consulted on before any implementation, and at present there is no draft recovery plan relating to the processes of the future use of the residential red zone lands, and that is still likely to be several weeks or months away yet. However, members of the community have not waited for the government to take the lead in this. Eastern Vision, a group of local community leaders, has taken the bull by the horns and already undertaken a community engagement exercise that covers the whole of the Eastern Flatlands, not just the residential red zone. And that includes many of the proposals for the recovery of the East that have been suggested by the communities over the last few years. Coming up, we speak to Evan Smith of Eastern Vision about this consultation. Welcome back. Over a period of 3 months in the second half of last year, the community organisation Eastern Vision undertook its own engagement exercise about the recovery of the eastern flatland suburbs of Christchurch, including the red zones. Joining me now is Evan Smith, Program Manager for Eastern Vision, to tell us what was involved and the results that came out of that initiative. So Evan, tell us, what is Eastern Vision?
Eastern Vision was set up about 2 or 3 years ago. It's a group of community leaders, And we have two main goals. One is to make sure that the community has a full say in all the decision making that relates to the recovery of the eastern suburbs. And also we want to make sure that there's a completely holistic integrated plan, a shared vision for the whole of the east that overarches all of the eastern suburbs to ensure that everything is integrated.
And what was the EvoSpace consultation?
The EvoSpace consultation started about a year ago. It went on for about 3 months. What we did is that we facilitated an engagement exercise with the community, and we used an online application to do that. So basically something that was on the website that basically did a whole series of different things. It was a means of collating and collecting all the different proposals that the community had already put on the table, and it mapped them out spatially, and it showed how they could all fit together. Then we collected feedback from the communities about what they thought of all those different ideas. And then we set up an analysis of all the data that came out of that and produced a report. And out of that came a map of community aspirations for the East.
So tell me, how did the EvoSpace website actually work? Like, what was involved there?
There were several steps in the process. First of all, we asked people to register online. They didn't have to put their full name or anything like that, but they did have to have an email address so that they could go back and update their feedback as they went along. We asked for some basic demographic information: what age group were they in, and what was their ethnicity, their gender, whether they had a disability or not. And we also asked them where did they live before the September quakes in 2010, and where do they live now, so that we could get an idea of whether they'd moved in the meantime. We also asked them if they'd been red zoned or not. When we did that, that enabled us to do quite a lot of analysis around who actually had responded and who contributed their ideas. Once people had registered on the website, we asked people to prioritise a set of 9 guiding principles for the recovery of the East. They could reorder them on the website by clicking and dragging them up and rearranging them in terms of priority order. And we also asked people if they wanted to exclude anything, is there anything there that shouldn't be there in terms of a guiding principle for the Eastern recovery. So we ended up with results like this. You had, at the very top, were things like keeping people safe from natural disasters. That was really important to people, as you'd expect, but also building back clean, green and sustainably, building strong, connected communities and ensuring that we could have healthy lifestyles. They were all important principles. The other point that came through, which was quite significant, we thought, is that the majority of people excluded remediating land and rebuilding in the red zone as a guiding principle for the recovery of the East. People didn't see that as a priority whatsoever.
What were some of the proposals that you had for the EvoSpace?
We started out with 27 proposals right throughout all of the East. It's not just the red zone, but right throughout all the Eastern Flatlands. We invited people to put new proposals on the table. We ended up with 43 in the long term, which is a lot more. And broadly speaking, they grouped into 4 different sort of clusters. One was around the coastal New Brighton. Another set was around aquatic recreation. Another set around making the most of the natural environment, restoring natural environment. And the last lot was around connecting communities from the city to the sea. And that's the kind of broad framework we've used to create this television series.
So how real could these proposals actually be?
Undoubtedly, some of them are probably pie in the sky. All we're seeking here with the engagement was whether there was a community mandate for them. There's no point in doing any further investigative work until we knew what the community wanted to do. Whether things were technically feasible, we still have to do that. We've also got to assess whether they're affordable, whether we can get consent from the landowners, whomever it may be, the Crown or the Council or whoever, and what the environmental impacts are.
Evan, what was the outcome of all this consultation from EvoSpace?
We asked each person when they went on to each proposal whether they agreed with it or whether they disagreed with it and what they felt about it. This enabled us to rank all the proposals into the most popular ones and the least popular ones. So we ended up with a bunch of proposals that had a lot of community mandate behind it, and that enabled us to then map them out on one overall graphic that showed how they all fitted together. And so that was the map of community aspirations, if you like. And that's what's guided us in terms of where to from here.
So how does Isa East relate to the next phase of the EvoSpace consultation?
This time we would like to see a much broader audience. So what we're doing is presenting the most popular proposals that are from the initial EvoSpace consultation and trying to see if we can get a lot more people providing feedback on them. But we're only taking the most popular proposals, and so that's much more manageable than it was perhaps for the first time round.
And is it costing much to do this?
The low budget. It's community driven. It's not. We don't have a Sarah comms team behind us with a large budget. We're doing it on the smell of an oily rag, basically. It cost us about 10 grand to do the consultation last year. That was with all the website development and everything else. This year it's probably going to be about 3 or 4 times that because of the television program, but essentially it's very low budget.
Thanks, Evan. Over the coming episodes, we'll look in some depth at the most popular proposals on the Evo space and offer you with an opportunity to provide your thoughts on these via the website. But first we'll explore the community values and guiding principles that ranked highest in last year's Evo Space consultation. Next episode, we'll look at the natural hazards and how to keep communities safe from them and what it means to build back clean, green and sustainably. Remember, you can always watch this episode online at any time by going to the CTV or Rebuild Christchurch websites, and you can share these links with your friends. So until next week, thanks for watching. This is Dion Swiggs for Eyes East.